So welcome everybody. This would be a very poor time management webinar if I didn't begin on time. At the same time, I recognize that people who may have signed up for this may be running a little late. So I'm trapped between those two realities. I need to start on time so that you can believe I know what I'm talking about with the subject. And at the same time, I want to allow for people that may be running a minute late to catch up. But I want to respect your time as well. So we will just give them one more minute and then we will get started. To kind of kick this off, I'm going to put a couple of polls up here. I want you guys to familiarize yourself with the controls. If you're not used to this type of webinar format, you can see the chat there. You can go in and type your name or introduce yourself into the chat. I'll show you how to do that. So I'm typing in the chat now. You should be able to see that. And then you should also be able to see if I start a poll, which you can answer. And so I'm going to go ahead and start the first one, which says, are you currently overwhelmed? Currently, today, this week, this month, this year, are you in a state of overwhelm? So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. Should be able to answer that now. All right, I think everybody who is going to join is here, or they're coming. All right, so let's dive right in. So this is a webinar unlike webinars I have done in the past. One, it's longer than some of the ones I've done. I usually like to do what I call a quick learn series, which is about 30 minutes. Really, for a time optimization webinar, I would love to have made this 30 minutes, but we would have had to have done a series of them. So I am actually going to try to get this done in an hour and allow us plenty of time for discussion. That said, it may take the full hour and a half, but we will not go beyond that. This is not like time management stuff you have done in the past. What we're going to do here today is really be incredibly practical. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how time works and how we can rethink time. But really, I just want to dive right into, here are things you can do right now to improve your time. That is the goal of this webinar. It's hard to sit and listen to me for an hour and a half. I get that. So I have some opportunities for some interaction in this. And if you can stay to the end, you will get a month free of coaching. Now, a lot of you are probably watching this on a replay, and that's good. But for those of you who are here live with me now, this is a good opportunity for very specific about what you're dealing with. And I want to make sure you can apply these things we talk about in your life today. If you're anything like me, I am sick to death of hearing about time management. I'm sick to death of hearing about time blocking. I just need to get off this treadmill and I want to have something I can use. So I'm going to give you the things today that I know do that for sure. And if you've attended any of my other time management stuff in the past, this is not going to be highly repetitive. There's a lot of new stuff in here for you that I've been waiting to bring till I had done it successfully myself. There's some of the old stuff in here, but most of this stuff is pretty fresh. So if you've been to my time optimization training before, you'll see this is quite a bit different. So let's get started. So let's start off with a quiz. So I want you, if you have a scratch piece of paper nearby, to go ahead and take this quiz. You're going to score each of these on a scale of 1 to 10. So the first question is, I feel overwhelmed most of the time. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how overwhelmed do you feel? All right, next question is, I have more plans than time. Scale that on 1 to 10. Next is, history tells me I am doing too much. Next, I miss or cancel appointments last minute. And then next, I need a break but don't have the luxury. And then last, I need money, so I spend time to get it, and I can't get ahead. So that's what I call the time money balance sheet. Now I'm now realizing that I'm not going to be able to show these to you one at a time, that it's going to show you the full slide, but that's fine. But this last one I want you to spend some time on considering. So if you had scored on average above a 5 or a 6 on the first 5 questions, you're overwhelmed, you got too much going on, you can't take a break like you'd like, you're having to cancel things last minute, and it's been like this historically with you, say in the last year, 2 years, 5 years, or your whole life, then I really want you to pay attention to this last equation. This is the aha moment that I had. I need money, right? So I spend time to get it, and then I can't get ahead. It's the time money balance sheet. And what we're finding is we're bankrupt. I can't spend any more time to get any more money, and then I'm not using my money to get more time. And these two tools, time and money, everything is a matter of time and money. These two tools are not being appropriately leveraged in my life. And that is ultimately the issue. All right, so let's get real about that. So I'm going to go through this slide really fast because you likely already know this. Let's just get real. The reality is that you have 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week, and 365 opportunities a year. And I like to say opportunities instead of days. We have 365 opportunities a year. That's great. The deception is we will make time or get around to things when we're freed up. We just see this potential in the future because we have 365 opportunities a year. We see this potential in the future of things getting done, but that's a deception, okay? The reality is you likely won't be able to do everything you want as fast as you want. That's reality, and history probably has taught you that. The deception is you can, so you don't need to plan. Now, you're probably already saying, well, I know if I plan, I can get it. But we have to plan correctly. And so just thinking that I'm going to get around to planning, or that's something I'm intending to do, is a lie that we often tell ourselves. The last reality is you are limited. No one likes to hear that, especially in the day we live in of self-worth, self-promotion, self-enlargement. No one wants to hear that you're limited. You want to hear you can do anything you want. But the deception often is it'll be different this time. I'm not saying you can't exceed your limitations to some degree. We're going to talk about that. That's why we're here. What I am saying is we lie to ourselves and say it's going to be different this time instead of learning from reality and applying it day by day. And I've coached, I don't even know how many dozens of people where their optimism has actually been their greatest weakness because they've never learned from past mistakes. They've always come back to saying the solution is greater hustle and greater motivation, or one little thing they're doing different is going to really make the difference this time. Like I hired a coach, or I hired a personal trainer, or whatever. They think that one little thing is going to make the big difference. It's going to be different this time to get all their energy back. But they never really learned from things in the past because they don't want to admit that they have limitations and challenges. But I'm here to tell you that your limitations and challenges you've discovered is actually the critical information to making tomorrow better, because we're going to use that information to have a better, more scientific, strategic approach. But in our day of optimism and self-esteem, we don't like to hear that stuff. We want to hear that I can be bigger. And I see it all over social media, everyone about how today is the day and this is my year and I'm going to name it and claim it and blab it and grab it and it's all mine and I just got to believe. But we turn off our brain, we switch on our hearts, and we act like it. And we walk into the same wall over and over and over again because we don't want to. It's the problem isn't that we suck and we just got to admit it. That's not the problem. The issue is we got to learn when we struggle. That's actually great information. That is scientific information we can now apply to our lives. And so It actually shouldn't hurt our self-esteem. It should excite our brains that we can move forward with this new information in a positive way. That is a mindset change for a lot of people, especially a lot of young people I work with, who really think as long as they're motivated and capable, they can do anything. Love that optimism, love that fresh spirit, but we have to add to it a healthy dose of strategic thinking, which is when I fail, that failure is an information gem that I'm now going to apply to my future. It's not a self-esteem hurt. It's a gem of information I need to use in my future. And I'm telling you, that type of thinking has gone by the wayside. I see it, especially with young people. So hopefully that is helpful for you to hear. So is there any hope? Solutions to time management issues often look good on paper or in a book. Like, I don't know how many books I've read on time management, but it always sounds good in the book. Just like business books, business strategy books, always look good on paper. Truth is, if it was that easy, we'd all be doing better, right? If it was that easy. So the solution you need will present itself when you have a realistic grasp of time, the correct mindset, and an understanding of how to strategize considering these facts. So we have to have a really wise view of time, a wise understanding, a realistic understanding of time as a foundation before we can really begin strategizing effectively. I hear people all the time act like they know better when it comes to time management. Oh, I know I should be doing this. Oh, I know I should be doing that. Well, based upon what? I read that somewhere. I heard that. Someone's told me that. Have you ever done it? No. Then maybe what you're learning is that doesn't work. And we got to look a little deeper. All right, let's go on. So rethink number one. So I'm going to give you 3 ways to rethink, and I'm going to give you like 3 or 4 strategies you're going to be able to implement today. Before we get into this one, though, I'm already 12 minutes in, and I know that if I talk for 12 to 15 minutes without pausing, that I may lose some of you. So I want to make sure you check out the chat. You can go into the chat. If you type in that chat, if you get involved in that chat, these webinars go a lot faster and you will actually get more. Everybody answered the poll. I appreciate that. You're all saying you're overwhelmed, but you can go right into this chat and introduce yourself if that's helpful. Or I would love to hear, what do you really want to take away from this today? If I can type. So feel free to jump into the chat and get your brains engaged a little bit while you're typing. So rethink number 1, prioritization is not ranking everything you want to do from 1 to 100 and then starting with number 1. I hear it all the time. Well, we got to prioritize. I got to prioritize. That's what people normally think. Actually, it is ranking 1 to 10 and then cutting the rest. And that is a tough pill to swallow because we go, well, how am I going to do 11 through 100? You can do it. We're going to get into some of the ways to multiply ourselves here in a little bit, but that is called multiplication. If you are in overwhelm, if you answered above 5 on the quiz before, don't default to one of the mistakes now and start saying it's going to be different this time. Well, I've read somewhere that I can get stuff done. Well, I refuse to believe that it can't be different this time. I don't want to squash your optimism. I want to pair your optimism with strategic thinking. And so we need, if you're in overwhelm, if you're a person who's gotten yourself there, which is like everybody, this is where we need to start. Again, I'm going to get into multiplication here shortly. Don't worry. Yes, you can still achieve all your dreams, but it is ranking 1 to 10 and cutting the rest. We live in a day of too many choices. Oftentimes, our issue with time management is our choices. Some of you are typing in the chat, so I'll give you a second if you're still typing. Amy wants to make sure she doesn't want to feel like all she's doing is work or talking about work, and Agnes just wants to get rid of overwhelm for good. And I work with Agnes, and I can tell you she is incredibly committed to that. Some of you may be familiar with some of the work of Dave Ramsey. Of course, he's a financial planner, and he has a famous quote where he says, "We have to live today like no one else so we can live tomorrow like no one else." Now, he's talking about spending money, which means, have no debt today, pay off all of our debt today, save money today, and learn how to rethink money. And then tomorrow can be different. Guys, you know what the difference between time and money is? Money is replenishable. Time is not. So if you think you need to budget that hard and be that focused and that strategic and think outside the box and unlike the rest of the world with money, think how much more we need to do it with time. And this is an example of that. We cannot be in time debt. So once you get out of time debt, hear me on this. Once you get out of time debt, it's different. Just like once you get out of financial debt and your money starts working for you and not against you, it's different. Time is the same way. We get out of time debt, time starts working for us and against us. So if you're in overwhelm, you're in time debt. And that's why Rethink number 1 is so important. If you've got lots of time, this doesn't apply to you. You can go ahead and rank 1 to 100. But for the rest of us, 1 to 10 on our priorities and cut the rest. So let me give you some categories of prioritization. This isn't, when I talk about a list of 1 to 100, I'm talking about stuff you want to do. I'm talking about goals, okay? This next list is, well, we'll get into it in a minute. Let me go into Rethink number 2 first. I'm getting ahead of myself. Rethink number 2 is this. Time blocking is for engineers and project managers. Now, if you're living according to time blocks, don't go delete them all off your calendar quite yet. That could hurt. But what we really need, most of us need, is sustained momentum. We need to be able to, for a minimum of 2 hours, if not the full day, be able to have momentum in one area of our life. Whether it's business development, whether it's sales, whether it's planning, we actually need to be able to sit undistracted and have momentum. We're going to get into how to do these. These are just how we need to think of it. I'm going to tell you exactly how to do these things here in a moment. So we've got to stop thinking about how can I fit it all into blocks and make sure everything's there. And we need to start thinking about how can I gain momentum. All right. Rethink number 3. Multitasking is impossible for humans. You have got to swallow that pill. It is actually a distraction. We do best with focus, margin, and creativity. I help a lot of companies hire, and I see it all the time. At the top of the resume, almost 50% of resumes I see all say the same thing. Excellent at multitasking. That tells me this person does not know themselves. They have bought in to what they've heard. You've probably heard me, if you've been in my training before, you've heard me say this before. In the 1950s, we realized we needed help to get everything done we needed, right? Hence the microchip. We had computers. The benefit of computers we saw was they could actually multitask. They've continued to multitask better and better. For some reason, about 40 years after the microchip, we look back at computers and said, multitasking is great. We should do that too. And we forgot that we invented the computer because we can't multitask. That's like inventing a hammer and saying hammers are good for hammering nails. Seeing how good the hammer hammers a nail and then saying, man, hammering nails with something hard is really good. I'm going to start beating my head against a nail because it works. We would never do that, but we've done that with the computer. Multitasking, truly multitasking, is impossible. You can only do one thing at a time. So what we're actually doing is distracting ourselves. We start to get focused on one task, we go to another, That's actually multitasking, guys. That's the book definition of a distraction. Until that can get into our mind, we won't fight it like we need to. Most entrepreneurs I work with sit down every day, open up their computer, their laptop, and just start working. Just start working. So we're going to combat. I'm going to show you exactly how to combat that. That is deadly. They just start answering emails. They just open up, just dive right into emails. No real plan. Just dive right into emails. They got some things they want to accomplish today, but they just open up, start emailing. Killer. Absolutely killer. Distraction, treadmill, overwhelm, immediate. What we need is focus, margin, that's space between stuff, and the ability for creativity, which means I can't be creative if I'm doing something. Okay? All right, I'll get off my soapbox now on the rethinks and let's get into the strategy. So I want you guys to actually work along with me now. This is a workshop, so you're going to work with me on this, not just hear information and then go off and hope you can apply it. I actually want you to work with me here. So if you're watching a replay, you can fast forward or pause or whatever, but rank your priorities for the year. Accomplish only what can be calendared with certainty, allowing for buffer time. Let me explain, let me unpack that a little bit. If you've attended any of my goal setting sessions in the past or my last webinar on goal setting, we spend the entire webinar on this strategy. I really show you how to cast a vision, set a goal or habit, work out the strategy, get to your action steps, and then have accountability. So if you haven't seen that, you can go on my YouTube channel, it's there, and you can watch how I do goal settings, setting goals that you can actually accomplish. But this is kind of a reinforcement of that. Once we know our priorities, the only goals we should be setting are the ones whose action steps can be calendared and are. Meaning, I am not going to go build a house until I've sat down and planned it out. Let me just give you this illustration. I'm going to go build a home, okay? And I'm the actual builder, which would be a terrifying thing because I can't even hammer a nail. So, but if I was to do this, I would sit down and I would figure out what is involved. I would draw up plans, beginning to end. I would get resources, make sure I could get the brick and wood and everything I need, make sure I had the right help. And if I needed this home to be built before winter, then I would have to figure out, can I get those resources? Can I lay the foundation? Can I get all those things done by winter before I began? This is wisdom, okay? So when we set a goal, we need to strategize it and get the action steps and every resource lined up as much as possible and lay that out on our calendar and say, yep, I can do it by here. The resource often needed, guys, is time. So if I set a goal and I don't know when or how I'm going to accomplish it specifically to my actual time, that's like saying maybe I got 100 bricks, maybe I got 1,000. It doesn't work. Our issue is we don't want to take the time to figure that out. And we're so used to being interrupted, we go, even if I plan that, I can't carry it out. Well, what if you went to your contractor and you said, I'd like you to build a home for me and I'd like it done by November. And he goes, yeah, we can try that. But I mean, we get a lot of people that call us. So, if someone calls us between now and then, we'll get it done whenever we get done. You wouldn't hire that contractor. So don't bet on yourself with the same thing in mind. Now, that doesn't remove the issue of your distractions and your interruptions. We're going to handle that. My point is, we've got to start getting real and thinking rationally. The reason we don't do that is no one does. Because status quo tells us to do what everyone else is doing, and they're all in overwhelm too. We've got to apply this strategy, which means all those things you want to accomplish this year, if you can't look on a calendar and pull it up and say, this is when I'm going to do it. This is how it's going to be done. I've got the time set aside. I know how I'm going to fight distractions. I know what I'm going to do. If you can't convince me of that, then I should not invest in it and neither should you. So you have to go back now and make sure you get those plans put in place. That's strategy number one for an obvious reason, because we can deal with the distractions that are inevitable and further strategies, but we have got to start here. I know very few people that do that. All right, let's go ahead and get your priorities in order. Now, I'm not talking about here the 100 things you want to do in a year and shrinking it down to 10. Not that exercise. That's going to take you a lot more time than we have time for today. I'm talking about your heart level priorities, the things that matter most to you. If you've been on my webinars before, you've seen me do this before. Okay, I did it on my goal setting webinar. It's just vital because we can get so obsessed with building the house that all the family that was going to move into the house with us leaves us in the process of building the house. We can get so obsessed with building our business that we lose touch with all of our friends, family, and the things that are important to us. So let's make sure that we never forget our true priorities, and this is essential to beginning time management. So I've got 8 categories here. I've added an 8th category of community. Business, finances, health, faith, family, friends, education, and community are our 8 categories. Go ahead and take a second. I'm going to shut up for a minute so you don't hear my droning on anymore. Go ahead and take a minute, take a piece of paper, and I want you to rank those in order of importance to you overall. Not like today, what it looks like. Not if I took a Polaroid picture of your life. But I want you to rank them in order to what you really believe are most important to you. Go ahead, take a minute and do that. And I think this will actually begin to answer Amy's question. You may have heard it said before, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. I like to say out of the abundance of the heart, our social media profiles speak. What I mean by that is, let's just say you ranked family as number one, but all you do is talk about work. All right. I'm not trying to call out Amy here. A lot of us are like this. What we're saying is our priorities aren't in order. That's what we're saying. Now, you might say, well, no. Family really is most important. It's just right now work is most important. And I understand that life has seasons. But if this isn't an intended season, meaning we planned this to be the work harvest season, it just seems like we're always in this season and we can't seem to get out of it, then while that is a challenge, the truth is we're making choices that are laying our true priorities aside. And as tough of a pill as this has been for me to swallow, and for many people I've coached, we have got to swallow this pill. So if family is number one, but right now, and it wasn't planned, it really seems like finances or work or something like that is business is number one, this is all you need to do. You don't have to stop working. What you have to say is, with the time I have, if family was truly a priority, how might things look different? And don't go into the ideal world. Well, we'd be on vacation every weekend and we'd be, working only 6 months out of the year. I know that's the goal you're working for. What I'm saying is, would you be taking a date night every month? Would you be taking one weekend getaway and just not working no matter what, so one weekend a month you've set aside? Would you have a family vacation on the calendar? Would you have a dinner 4 nights a week with the family and not work after dinner if it was truly a priority? And maybe you have to work towards that, but is there something you can do now that shows it truly is a priority? And a lot of times it might not be as much as we want to give, but it's starting to win back those little things is what's really key. And you've got to commit and not be a perfectionist or an overachiever here. Just commit to one night a week that you guys will not work together, or one weekend a month where you'll just get away and leave the briefcase and laptop at home. If it's truly a priority, we cannot sacrifice our priorities on the altar of work. Easier said than done, but a lot of times it's our overachiever tendency, our means to an end mindset that is another deception. All right, let's move on from here. So strategy number 2. So you've ranked your priorities, right? That's important. Oh, let me go back. You've ranked your priorities. So when it comes back to the 1 to 100 thing, you have to make sure if you're going to scale it to only 10 and cut off the other 90, that those 10 things consider these categories. So I just made it even smaller for you. That if 9 of the 10 things you're now going to do all falls under one category, and that category is number 3 in your life, you're going to be pretty successful and pretty miserable at the same time. So let's not do that. All right. I could probably make a whole webinar in just that area. Let's move on. Strategy number 2, never leave a meeting, task, or conversation that you want to continue open-ended. Always set a DDT. Guys, if you don't take anything else away from this webinar, please take this away. This is a lifesaver. It used to just say never leave a conversation that you want to continue open-ended, always get a DDT, because I use this in sales training. But I've added here task. So what's a DDT? A DDT is a day, date, and time on my calendar and on the other individual's calendar if it involves someone else. So I'm in a meeting with a client or prospect, and they say, yeah, we're interested in moving forward. And I say, oh, great, I'll follow up with you next week. I just committed to interrupting them. And that's bad business. Instead say, oh, you're interested? Great, well then let's set aside some time to keep working on this. How about next Monday at 3 o'clock we have a call? Now, of course, you'll say to me, well, they said they need to think about it first, or they've got things they need to do first. They couldn't give me a time. I understand that. So then this is your response. Since this is important to you, and since you've got a number of things to do before we can really commit to having another meeting, let's go ahead and put just 5 or 10 minutes on the counter for a quick touch base call so we can keep this in front of us. That 5 to 10 minutes is going to act like a test did in high school for us. They're going to study the night before the test. It acts as accountability for them. It also is going to keep you from interrupting. It's going to keep you from basing your life upon an uncertain fact of their follow-up with you. And it's going to help them tremendously to keep in front of them what they just told you was important, and they're probably living in overwhelm as well. So my conclusion is it's simply good leadership. Now, if you're meeting with a client regularly, if you're working, so let's say you're in real estate, as some of you are, if you're working with a realtor or with a real estate clients and with buyers and sellers, and you have to talk to them all the time, then a standing weekly appointment is excellent for this. We have a tendency to say, call me anytime. That's true. But if we really mean that, why don't we go ahead and give them 30 minutes a week where we're going to have a weekly call just to keep this in front of us, touch base, see how things are going. That will mean they won't blow up my phone as much because they'll wait till that standing weekly call. My voicemail will never be used, and they'll only call me in a case of emergency. Now, I understand some people are going to blow you up anyway. It's how that's life. But the goal is to get the majority of people, those 80%, into those appointment slots. It works very, very well. It's just really good leadership. I mean, in college, didn't our professors all have office hours? Would they answer a question at the end of class? Sure. Could we interrupt them if there was an emergency with an email? Of course. But we knew they were available for an hour every week where we could go and meet with them and ask those questions. And so we prepared for those meetings. We looked forward to them. We put them on our calendar, and your clients will do the same. So use the day, date, and time method. Also for task. So let's say I'm cleaning my garage and I only get 50% of the way done. And I go, all right, well, I'll get back to this later. You've got to, like, that has got to be like the scariest thing you could ever say. We've got to rethink that. I'm going to get to this later. Hit the brake, open the calendar. I'm going to get to this here. This is when I'm going to do it. If I can't commit to it, then I've got to take it off my goals list. That's what I'm trying to get to here. If you can't calendar the next step or the next steps, then you got to ditch it. Do it or ditch it. If you're in overwhelm, if you are living at home with mom and you're in an abundance of time, if one of you people that registered for this, one of my Instagram buddies, right? I don't want to pick on the Instagrammers, but let's just say you're just sitting at home on social media all day long. You can just get around to stuff when you choose. This doesn't apply to you. For the rest of us, do it or ditch it, or DDT. Do it, DDT, or ditch it is your only hope. That's the reality we got to live in if you want to get off the treadmill. All right. I want to talk about interruptions. Before I do, I've talked another 15 minutes without kicking it back. Think about all the commitments you have open-ended right now. A great exercise would be to go back and make a list of all your open-ended commitments. What do you need to DDT? How many people need to be DDT'd? How many people have you called and said you'd get back together with them? Remember, it's do it, like do it now, ditch it, or DDT. So maybe make some notes on that. And then I want you to type in the chat, are you using DDT now? And is this helpful? Or are you going to use it? So if you can, jump in the chat. We got people still coming into the webinar now, so we've got a few more people diving in. Take a minute to reflect. Even if we're not typing in the chat, I want you to have time on this webinar to work on this stuff, because you might leave this webinar and not have time to work on it. All right, let's talk a minute about interruptions. So you're at the office, you're at a networking meeting, you are going for the door, and there's Sally, and it's always Sally, right? So Sally sees you, and she says, you see Sally, you say, hey Sally, how are you? Sorry, you're Sally in this illustration. So whoever it is sees you, says, how are you? I haven't seen you in forever. So Barb is the interrupter here. So we say, hi Barb, I'm doing great. Happy to see you as well. I'd love to catch up more, but I only have about 3 minutes until my next call. Can we schedule a coffee to catch up? Absolutely, great, I'm looking forward to it. What did I just do there? I just DDT'd them at the start. Why? Because what typically happens is I'm interrupted, I get 5 minutes into conversation, I start checking my phone, checking my watch. Now, I might have time to talk to Sally here, but I really should be spending my time working on something else. I don't want to be rude to her, so I kind of get stuck in this thing because the appointment I had wasn't with another person. Because let's be real, if the appointment you had was with your doctor, you would have said, hey, I only have a minute, I got to get to my doctor's appointment. But if my appointment I had was to clean my desk, to make calls, to ask for referrals, then I'll take some time and talk to Barb. So what we need to do is right at the beginning, very kindly say to someone, I haven't seen you in a while, I'd love to catch up, and give them a reasonable amount of time. I've got 3 minutes, I've got 4 minutes. Don't give them a generic amount of time, a minute or 5 minutes, because people think that they don't know what that means. That means forever. Okay, that means a short period of time. It doesn't mean the actual amount of time. So you want to say 3 minutes or 3.5 minutes. You look at your watch, you go, oh, hey, it's so good to see you. I haven't seen you in it forever. Hey, I've got like 3 minutes. Why don't we catch up now? And if we need more time, let's schedule something. Talk for 2.5, 3 minutes, catch up, schedule a meeting if it makes sense to do so. And you go, yeah, but I don't want to meet with her again. No problem. Take the time you want with them now. Hey, Sally, how are you? I haven't seen you in forever. Hey, Barb, I'm doing great. Happy to see you as well. I'd love to catch up, but I only have about 9-10 minutes until I actually have to head out. Why don't we use this time to catch up? Or are you in a hurry as well? No, I could spare 10 minutes. Great. And if you want more time, you can schedule a coffee. So my point is you don't have to commit to more time with people. You can give them time now. 3 minutes. 10 minutes, a promise to schedule and actually schedule it before you leave the meeting if it makes sense. But we've got to start the conversation telling people how much time that we're able to give them. Why does this, in my opinion, not sound rude? It's not rude because we're actually giving them time. We're actually saying, I'm going to spend this amount of time with you, instead of just humoring them and stealing from someone else. Okay, because if I give time, 30 minutes to this person or 15 minutes to this person open-ended, then I'm taking away from some other commitment I have. And so what I want to do is tell them how much time I have right up front. That is not rude if I say it like I've put here. I'm really excited to catch up with you. Why don't we spend 3 minutes doing so? And then I need to run. That's fine. And then if you have to schedule time, you do it before you leave the meeting. All right. I think you've probably come to understand that. If this happens to you a lot and you go, that sounds good, you need to practice it. You're going to sound like a weirdo if you don't practice it. So spend some time to actually practice saying that. And people will learn this from you, and they'll come up to you and say, do you have 3 minutes? We can schedule more time if necessary. Most people that I work with that who know me always go for my calendar because they've learned that. And I hope no one thinks I'm rude. I don't think they do, but again, I might be nice to them, but I'm stealing from someone else. Real quick on that, one last little nugget on that. So I work with a lot of people that don't have issues getting places on time. It looks like that because they're late all the time, but their issue isn't arrival. They don't have arrival issues, right? It's not like I can't ever seem to get anywhere on time. Their issue is departure issues. They can't leave the last conversation they were in. And if you were to add up all that time of departure issues from conversations they're having with people, it can make up hours. The worst part about it is they're late to other people, so they're actually damaging their integrity with other people. You see, what you are is a thief. You're stealing from the future appointment to give to this person who's interrupted you. And we've got to get really serious about that and notice that it's actually a character issue. We justify it because everyone does it. And the way out of that is not to worry about being rude to Barb, but to start the conversation off with giving Barb the amount of time you can. That's just integrity. And again, I'm not trying to say you have bad character. I know for me, if I don't take it that serious, it's very easy for me to simply make excuses and get really good at it with my next appointment. Departure issues have got to change for time optimization. All right. Strategy number 3, block types of time instead of tasks. I hate time blocking. Before you jump on the chat and start saying time blocking is the best thing since sliced bread and I use it all the time, if that's working for you, then I want you to keep doing it. If you are highly task oriented, especially if you're a very slow, introverted, thorough type of person, you might find time blocking to be helpful. But I have found that time blocking is usually a sequence of failures. Once one step isn't met, there's a domino effect to the rest of your time blocks. They just fall like dominoes. Doesn't work. When it's this task, this task, this task. Now, I'm not saying you can't have a linear progression or set time aside for certain tasks and all of that. I have just never met anyone who time blocked like a champ, except for certain project managers. So I want you to block types of time instead of tasks, which helps with the focus, momentum, and creativity we were talking about earlier with the new mindset. So here are the types of time. And if you've been in my time management before, this is a repeat, but this is key. So the first type of time is admin time. It's the time you use to plan, declutter, work on projects, get stuff done. It's good to have at least 30 minutes of admin time at the beginning and end of each day. So that email time where you open up and just dive into email, and the next thing you know, you're opening projects, next thing you know, you're researching something and you just get overwhelmed. You've only got 30 minutes, and that 30 minutes is only for emails, the beginning and end of every day. So you start every day with correspondence, you end every day with correspondence and planning, and you shut your laptop and you go home. This has been a lifesaver for me and a lifesaver for my family. I do have more time. I do check my email in between things. I'm not going to lie to you there. Of course I do. But my point is that admin time is time in the office, right? Or time at home, relaxed, shoes kicked off, plenty of time to work through a preset projects that you're going to do. I don't have to time block 30 minutes for this project, 30 minutes for this project, 30 minutes for this project. What I need to do is time block significant admin on a regular basis. So every week I've got admin time. It's ideal that it's the same day every week. It's ideal that you're not doing that and then going out and meeting with people. You want your focus to be admin. So when you go into admin time, you really want to turn off all distractions. Turn off your email, unless you're actually working email during your admin time. Turn off your phone and just file and do whatever you need to do. This is why when a lot of us work Saturday mornings for 2 or 3 hours, we get more done in those 2 to 3 hours on Saturday morning than we do all week, because it works. You need to have this every week. If it can't be the same time, still put the admin time block on your calendar. It's a block, but it's just admin. It doesn't say what you're going to do. It's just admin for 6 hours, 2 at least, or else you can't get momentum. Put it on your calendar. If you have to move it, you move it. But my point is, you need to know that's already on your calendar. Why? Even if you don't have anything to do, it needs to be on your calendar. Why? Because something comes up, you're going to say, I'm going to get that done in my admin time. I'm not running around all day long with a million things to do in my head, not knowing when I'm going to do them. I'm going to say that again in case I've lost you, because I've been droning on in a webinar for 45 minutes. You can't run around with a million things to do on a list or in your head, and you don't know when you're going to do them. As things come up, I look to my admin time and I say, I'm going to do them then. Now, earlier we talked about if you're going to set any goal, you have to kind of set out everything that you're going to do in that goal. Those to-dos, those can be accomplished in admin time, but I also said you have to have buffer time, which means I've got more admin time than I need to accomplish my tasks, my action steps associated with my goals. Why? Because things come up and I do it in my admin time. It's really that simple. You go, well, I've got too much to do to fit into all that. Back to rethink number 1. You've got to cut it out. You've got to pick your 10 until you get out of time debt. So see how it's all coming together. All right. And you guys have been sleepy in the chat today, which is fine, but I want to make sure I don't actually put you to sleep. So I'm going to get through these slides, and then I'm going to, we can take a break, but we are going to get done early today, which I'm sure doesn't bother anyone. So the next type of time that we want to I hate to say block, but plan for in advance. When I think of time blocking, I think of a task I'm going to do, and I'm putting it on my calendar, and then I'm doing this task, and then I'm doing this task, where these are large blocks of focus. So like all day Monday's admin, all day Tuesday is rest, all day Wednesday is serve time. You'll see what I mean. So active rest is actually the time that you've set aside for your exercise and sleep and family. And we have to have this regularly. I don't care if you can pull an all-nighter. All right. Science shows you have greater momentum when you rest. You have to get it. And if 9 hours of sleep a night is what you need, you have to get it. Unfortunately, that means you have less productivity time, but that productivity time will be exponentially better used unless you're just running around in a frenzy trying to get a million things done. Again, that's the problem. We have to go to getting out of time debt first and cutting all that stuff out before rest really starts to help us, or else you're constantly just getting makeup sleep. I could go on and on and on about that. Yes, Gene, I am live. Only live webinars here. Gene is asking if I'm live. You can type away questions. I don't do what are called evergreen webinars where they replay. You're all real people, and this is real time. All right. The next type of time is called build time. Okay. That's where we focus on building our pipeline, building our network, building, if you're a business owner, this is the time that we actually work on sales, cold calling. I knew there was a few realtors coming into this, so I put, first time buyer, seller meetings. All that time with people is our build time. I want to set that aside in advance. So 3 weeks from now, I've got time on my calendar, a whole day of build time. I've got a sales block in there. I know if someone wants to schedule with me a prospect meeting, it's going to go in there. You go, well, what if that day doesn't work for them? Well, that's the first day I'm going to schedule. I'm going to say, are you available Thursday in 3 weeks? And they say no. Okay, well, then I might have to make an exception. But I always want to start with the time block. So let me tell you what ends up happening. This is how my calendar looks. Mondays, tons of admin time. All right. Take a Tuesday, for example. Client meeting, client meeting, client meeting, client meeting. Sales block, or prospect meeting, sorry. Prospect meeting, sales block, cold calling. That's how it will look, because that's the momentum I'm in. That's the way I'm dressed. That's the music I'm listening to. That's my mindset all day. We are creatures of momentum. I can't go from that into admin and projects and then back out. My brain becomes mush. Neither can you. This is how we need to be. And you go, well, I can't set aside 6 hours ever. Guys, this is how we get out of that time debt. You need to start with at least 2 hours of completely focused in this one type of activity in order to succeed. If we can't do this, you're just going to fill up all the minutia and never get off the treadmill. I know it's not easy to get out of this situation, but if you apply everything I'm giving to you today, you will get out of it. And for most of us, we have to go back to step number 1, and it's about cutting out 90% of what we're doing. Just like getting out of debt. All right, focusing and momentum. Here now we're talking about serve time. So serve time is when I spend with existing clients. So if you're in real estate, this is the time you're spending with your buyers, the time you're spending with your sellers. This is the time you're out showing homes. This is time for the rest of us that are like consultants. We're spending time with our clients. If you're a home inspector, this is the time you're doing your inspections. This is the time that we're fulfilling upon the obligations that we were able to get during our build time. Pretty simple. I set that out in advance. The last thing I want to say to someone when they say, oh, hey, can you come and do this or that? Or is, sure, when is good for you? First thing I'm going to say is, how about this date? How about this time? We always try that first, and then we move it around as we need, and we give ourselves large blocks of this time. All right. Strategy number 4. Make a list of common distractions and kill them at the root. For a lot of us, the day, date, and time I gave you and this are the 2 main takeaways we need. Oh, and number 1, cutting out like 90% of what we're doing, which I know isn't what you wanted to hear, but it's just the truth. Make a list of common distractions and kill them at the root. Even good distractions must go if not aligned with your mission or your top 3 priorities. Another tough pill to swallow. So we are at almost an hour in. We're 50 minutes in. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to give you some time to actually work on this. I suggest you stay for the next 20 minutes. We're going to end early, so don't bump off here. But I want you to make a list of your top time wasters. Okay. Now remember, they can be even good distractions, if they're not aligned with your top 3 priorities from the priority list you made earlier. So if TV time with family truly, truly is helping your family grow closer together and it's part of your family vision, then don't unplug the box and put it in the garage. If you can't find one place where TV helps you accomplish your mission, throw it away. And you go, well, it helps me unwind. If it truly, truly helps you to rest and it is not in any way a distraction. See, we always find some good. There's no perfect, things are not always black and white. Well, the TV helps me rest and rest is good, but the TV also distracts me and distraction is bad. What do? Kill the TV. How do I rest in ways that aren't distractions? Are you ever distracted by a book sitting on your counter? No, the book doesn't give me noise. The book doesn't take my attention away, except when I take the time to open it. Okay, then a book is a better way. I know that's hard. It's tough love, but it's all the love I can give you because it's the effective love. So my point in this is, like, for example, in my household, right? I'm not saying I do it all right. I want to sound self-righteous here. In my household, the TV is not on until after dinner. That's the rule, okay? So my kid, we homeschool, so my kids are home during the day. So my point is, we have once a week a planned family movie night. We make popcorn, we all get together, we pick the movie, we're excited about it all week, we sit down. It's wonderful family time. There has never been a time where just watching shows was ever good for our family. So we have to force the TV to be off except during family movie night. So the TV has become like the movie theater. It's only when we plan a family movie that we try to use that. And it's been a tough battle unless you can really cut it off at the root. So I'm going to shut up. I want you to make a list of common, even sometimes good distractions that don't align with your mission right now. Spend a couple of minutes on this. Don't go check your email. Make a list and prepare to do some killing. So go ahead and make your list, and I promise I'll shut up here for a minute. If you have a question on how to kill them, you can type it into the chat. All right, I've launched another poll as well. You can answer the question, are you on a treadmill? Sometimes I have very, very productive weeks, and at the end of the week, I look back and say, I didn't make it any further along my tracker that I had planned on. That is a treadmill week. What do we do in those weeks? We learn from them. We learn from them. And the first thing we learned was, did I have enough buffer time? Did I have enough distraction? Did I have too many distractions? Did I follow my momentum blocks? These are the things I got to look at. If not, why? Am I doing too much? I go back and ask all those questions again. And guys, it has been very hard for me to cut out things in my life to get out of time debt. To be honest, it's much harder for me to get out of time debt than it is to get out of financial debt. All right. Should probably start a poll. Are you ready for me to go on? All right, let's go. So now that you have taken these things into consideration, and I've only given you a few, we could talk for days about this stuff, but I've given you, I think, what are critical for those of us in time debt, in overwhelm, on a treadmill. If that's not you, then this next part is, but where do we go from there? Where's the hope? As our mindset aligns with reality, Okay, our mindset becomes that new way of rethinking this stuff. Our goals actually will then become attainable because we're actually going to plan before we act. And our strategies then will become more effective. As we do these things, as we handle distractions, as we think of time right, and we don't allow for these distractions, as we don't allow for these interruptions, as we use things like the DDT, as we really see every time you spend time is like spending money and we start to guard it appropriately, then we become very, very aware of our limitations, and it'll cause us to be accountable to the strategies I've given you. Okay, we have to believe this stuff. So how do I get to the next level then if I have all these new limitations on my life? Well, the overwhelm you're in is actually the limitation. So when you get out of debt, you're actually less limited. You're going to have margin. Once you have margin, your goal is not to go and spend that margin. We don't want to be like teenagers who every time they get a paycheck, they go and spend it right away. Every time you get new time, I don't want you to spend it. I actually want you to leave it there. And what we're going to then do in that time is get creative. We're going to be visionary. We're going to have a whole day or 2 or 3 or a week when we go into our office with desk calendars and whiteboards and we start planning. And what are we planning for? Multiplication. Multiplication. How I can collaborate with others to get more done. It was John Haywood, the playwright, famously said, he's got some great quotes. If you're not familiar with John Haywood, English playwright, many hands make light work. It's actually not a Bible verse. A lot of people think it's a Bible verse. It's not, but many hands make light work. So that is got to be the goal. Now, before you run out and hire a bunch of people, you have to plan for that too. And I've watched so many entrepreneurs do that. They run out and they hire people thinking that's going to solve all their problems, and they don't plan for that. And it doesn't. There's a lot of thought that needs to go into these things, but we're impatient. Haste makes waste, especially wasted time. So what we want to do in wisdom is look at that multiplication as much as we can once we have the margin. Once we have the margin, we can begin putting those strategies in place of hiring or planning or spending layers in better ways. Because now we can let, just like we want our money to work for us, we can let our time work for us. So if I gave you $1 million right now, I doubt you would try to see what job you could create for yourself. That money to you would spell freedom. You would use that money to make more money so you wouldn't have to work so hard. Your time margin has to be the same way. I've got some time. I'm going to use that time so I can actually get more time so I don't have to work as hard. Now, a lot of you are saying that's a great luxury. I've just got too much to do before that can happen. I understand that. But I want you to see how you got here. Unfortunately, getting out of debt is not an overnight trick, and neither is getting out of time debt. So maybe that extra time you get, you really do have to spend just getting stuff done. Maybe you have cut yourself down from 100 things you're trying to do to 50, but that 50 is still taking a bunch of time. Hear me on this. What you must do is spend your time getting that stuff done without adding to it. It's like cutting up your credit cards and getting those debts paid and not adding to it and then starting over. It's the same with time. So you're going to say, we're not going to commit to anything until we're out of time debt. Nothing else. But what if I have an idea that can cause multiplication right now? Well, then use it. If you have something right now and it's easy and you've planned it out and you've thought it through, if you can hire someone today and you've got the plans for them and they're not going to require a lot of management and they could just come in and just be a lifesaver, then great. I'll give you an example of that though to make sure you don't go off the reservation with this. Hiring someone to cut your grass requires no management, no training, $60 a month. You've got that in the bank. Pretty easy. I just got back 2 or 3 hours a week on cutting my grass, right? That's an easy one to do. Maybe cleaning your house, maybe babysitting your kids. Those are pretty easy. Virtual assistant, not always as easy, guys. A calendar program sometimes is what you need, not a virtual assistant. An answering service might be helpful. Those are plug and play. Another employee, don't be so quick. Don't be so hasty. Unless it's already a defined and developed role that you've spent time to figure out what they're going to do, what core values they need to have, how you're going to onboard them and put all that time in place before you even start interviewing, a lot of times that's a mistake. I just coach too many people to see that. Now, I know what you're thinking, but if I put that employee in place, I'll get that time back quicker. And that's not unwise, but you've got to spend that time. It's going to be one of your 10 things, and you've got to spend that time. So and those 10 things you're going to now keep and the 90 you're going to get rid of, those 10 things can involve multiplication. Totally can. I'm just saying you got to count the cost before you do it. You got to plan it out. Don't be hasty. Don't be hasty anymore. Good ideas not thought through oftentimes do not serve us well. So my goal is for you all to get out of time debt. Once you're out of time debt, then all those books you're reading about how to grow your business, all those books you're reading about how to leverage your time, and all those coaches you're listening to, you can actually start to apply that stuff. That garage you're filling with hobbies can actually get done, but you've got to get out of time debt first. It's not what we want to hear, just like you don't want to hear about consolidating your debt and having to make these big payments and not enjoying yourself. You go, oh, I won't be able to have fun. I deserve some time. But we got ourselves there. We spent ourselves there. Don't be hard on yourself, but learn from it. Learn from it. Get out of time debt. All right. I'm going to help you today by ending a little